What's up, guys? Hope you're doing well. Hope you're having happy holidays, and I am back today with another video. As promised, we are in Tennessee visiting my parents again for the holidays. For today, what I have for you is we're going to go over my Taranis. I'm going to show you my Taranis setup so that you know what I like to do in my radio. Now, there's a lot of tutorials out there that'll show you how to set up your radio, how to pair it with your quad, how to calibrate it, how to change audio. These are not things that I'm doing today. The things that I'm going to do today is I'm going to show you how I like to use my Taranis. From using Throttle Cut to the timer that I use to audio cues that I put in there. This is just my personal setup, not a how-to in any way, shape, or form. All right? But calibrate your radio. Please do that for yourself. Anyways, moving on. So we're going to get right into it. So,
dang, buddy, look at them switches.
ooh. From the home screen alone, you're going to see a couple of things on here. You're going to see that I like to have, that I use a timer right there. It's a throttle percentage timer. So we're going to get into exactly what that means in just a second. And you're also going to notice that it just says quads. It doesn't say a specific setup because I like to use my radio in one model to control all the quads that I have. All the quads I have built, all the quads I will build, as long as I'm using the X4Rs so that I don't have to change the protocol that the radio is using, it will keep working. X4R, XSR, both of those are the same protocol, so don't worry if you mix and match, because I got a couple XSRs that I haven't installed yet, but I'm going to. Just so you know, all you have to do to use one model for all your quads is when you build a new quad or you get a new receiver, just go in there and pair it to the same model, and then that model will continue to operate all of the old receivers plus whatever new ones you add. Now, you're going to see right away here, we are back to that timer. If you'll notice that timer number 1 is a throttle percentage timer. And what that means is that if the throttle is at 0, like that, the timer isn't moving whatsoever. If the throttle is at full, the timer is going 1-to-1 on time. So 1 second at full throttle is 1 second ticked off on the timer. If it's at half throttle, the timer is going 50% time. So 2 seconds at half throttle is 1 second on the timer. Now what that does is it allows me to use a timer, but it also is kind of dynamic. So if I'm in an environment where I'm going full throttle nonstop, say a race, or somewhere where I'm just popping up over trees nonstop, like full throttle, full throttle, full throttle. That'll be different than if I'm just cruising under a canopy doing some proximity stuff. That'll let the battery last longer. So that's how I set up my timer. I like it the countdown to be voice, so it says 10, 9, 8, etc. I don't like the minute call because I don't need to know that I've been flying for 20 seconds of my timer. The biggest difference in what I do with my radio versus, say, Steel or Schizo or anybody else that I know is my arming sequence. I have a very complicated arming sequence, I know, but I'm kind of a safety nut. When I was a kid, I got shot in the eye with a BB gun, and so it left me kind of skittish when it comes to safety. So let's just dive right into that, okay? I really need to tell you a story with how my arming sequence came about. I initially armed on the sticks like everybody. I think pretty much everybody starts out that way. But then I moved on to arming on a switch, and I was doing the motors always spinning. So you flip the switch, motors are spinning. I didn't really like that. I wanted something a little bit safer so that if I flipped the switch, the motors weren't spinning. And also, Steel kind of figured out, actually I think Chad figured it out initially. I don't remember. Steel, Chad, somebody else figured out that if you set it to where the motors weren't always spinning when armed and used a throttle cut switch, it was more stable. This was before air mode. That it was more stable at min throttle, and it was more maneuverable. And you didn't have to carry a lot of throttle. We used to have to carry a lot of throttle while we were doing the floaty stuff, but not so much anymore. Now, so that enabled us to have to flip 2 switches like this. You'd have to go flip, flip, and then it was armed and spinning. And I kind of like the safety aspect of that. So when I moved into, when I tried out the KISS flight controller several months ago, the way it works is if you arm on a switch and do the throttle cut, when you arm, the motors start spinning, but the PID controller isn't going. So you can move the quad around and the motors don't ramp up If you move the throttle out of 0, they just kind of spin at idle. But it made me nervous about the way that was working. So I kind of modified my, my arming sequence. And now I really like it, and I'm going to explain to you why I do. Oh man, I'm trying to think of how to explain this. So we're going to get right into it. Basically, what it comes down to is I set up in the flight controller software to arm on this switch here, so that when SB is all the way down, the quad is armed. But in my radio, I set it to where I have to do more than just SB all the way down. So the way that I do that is under Special Functions. Okay. Now under Special Functions, I have a setting that if SE, which is this switch up here on the top, is in the up position, that I set it up like a throttle cut, but instead of being forcing the throttle channel to 0, I force the I override channel 6, which is what my arming switch is on, to -100. So that can't go to the high value unless SE is out of this position. So if this switch, SE, is all the way up, then there's no way the quad can arm whatsoever. Not at all. Okay? So if you flip this switch, nothing's going to happen. Quad's not armed, motors aren't spinning. Now, to allow SE to come out of -100, you have to go to here, to the middle position or the top position. Now, I also set up my throttle cut so that SE in the middle or up, throttle is forced to -95, which with the trim and everything, it works out to like 1008 on the, or so in the GUI. SE is up, SE is middle. Both of those -100. But the difference between up and middle is middle will allow channel 6 to come out of -100. So what I do to arm, I flip all the way down and then to middle. Now those two things allow channel 6 to go to a high value, which arms the quad. The props still aren't spinning because in the flight controller software I've set it to, I've turned off the props always spinning. When I go all the way down on SE, the props spin. That engages my throttle cut and goes from the -95 value to what my min throttle setting is, which is just spinning props. Okay, so I know it sounds complicated, but there are a couple of benefits. Number one, you can't make the props spin with just one flip of the switch. Number two, even if you have SB down and you accidentally bump this one all the way down, it won't arm because going through the middle switch, it goes too fast through the sequence from arm to throttle out of idle. So it thinks that the throttle was out of idle when you tried to arm, and you can't get the props to spin that way. So you basically, it makes it impossible to bump a switch and have props spinning. I mean, it's not impossible, but it's highly unlikely. So I like that setup for safety's sake, and it also makes it 2 switches to spin the motors, whether I'm using Betaflight, KISS, Raceflight, anything. I like it better than the double arming system in Raceflight. I'm glad that Raceflight's trying something new in that front for safety's sake, but I just, I'd kind of come to my own solution ahead of time, and so that's what I use. Is it overly complicated? Yes. Do you want to use it? I don't know. Maybe you do, but that's how I set it up personally. What else do we have for you beautiful people? So now we're going to get into a lot of these other things. Now you notice the very first thing on here is it says backlight. And the reason for that is I like to be able to turn the backlight on when I want without doing a whole lot, so that if it's at night I can look at the radio. Currently that's set to SD, which is this switch here. I just set that up so that I could leave the light on for you guys for while I'm recording. Normally that is set to so that when I flip the momentary switch,
1 and 3.2,
it lights up.
1
And
and 3.2.
you'll notice down here on special function 3 that I also have another SF which is my momentary. I moved my momentary from that side to this side because I had a Spectrum radio first. That's where the momentary was on it, and I was used to it, and I wanted it over there. So when I flick that momentary switch, it gives me an audible readout of my timer. So I know about how long. Now that's handy in a couple of situations. If you're flying around and you're like, did I reset my timer? Which if you use the timer, you have to reset it every flight by holding down enter. So if I'm like, did I reset my timer? I can just flip that switch.
1 and 3.2.
I'm like, no, I've got a minute and 3 seconds left. Or it could be like negative 20 seconds, and I'm like, oh crap, I forgot to set it. So now I got to be vigilant. Or if you're in a situation where you're trying to go a long distance away and you want to make sure that you don't go too far to where you don't have enough time to get back, you can keep checking it and see if you're about halfway through the timer or whatever you've decided is going to be your turnaround point on that timer. So I like being able to have that readout. Sf2 Sg Volume. You notice, all right, special function 2, I've got set to where when the SG switch is in the up position, the volume is mapped to this potentiometer. So if I'm in a situation where I want my radio to be really quiet, I can just make sure that switch is up, turn the knob all the way down, and now my timer sounds like this. You almost can't hear it. So if I'm in a scenario where I don't want to be heard, I can do that. If I'm in a very loud environment, I just turn it way up,
1 and 3.2.
and it's even louder than normal. Most of the time I just leave that switch off because I don't need volume control, or I put the pot in the center,
1 and
and it
3.2.
sounds fine.
1 and
About the same,
3.2.
either way. I don't think about it a lot unless I want it, but I like having it I like it being there when I need it. Okay, SH. So several of my quads I have telemetry set up, not all of them. I find that with if you're using telemetry and all you have is the current voltage of your battery, it works great if all of your batteries are at the same health level. If that's the case, then you know that when on a punch out you dip to, I don't know, whatever it is, that's going to be your time to come in. But now what happens when you're in a scenario where all you're doing is cruising the whole time? What ends up happening is you drain the battery all the way down, or very close to that value, which is probably going to be in the 12 volt range, give or take. That's going to be really bad for your batteries. Also, if you have a battery that is dying, that one's going to voltage sag way lower, and it's going to be setting off your alarm the whole flight. So I just find that the timer works better than the battery monitoring. That being said, I do have set up on SH here for my quads with telemetry, which is most of them. I'm gonna always set up telemetry from now on, but that's beside the point. I've got some older ones that don't. So SH,
0 volts.
I switch that and it gives me an audible readout of my current voltage. So if let's say I'm flying and I'm like, man, this battery seems like it's sagging a lot, I can give it a punch out, and while punching it out, flip that switch, and I can know exactly what the voltage is sagging to. Likewise, if I take off and I've reset my timer and I'm like, man, I think this battery was already flown, I can flip that switch and get an audible readout of what my voltage is at. So, very handy to have. And that's pretty much it for my setup, guys. That is all that I've got for you for my radio setup. I know it's very complicated. I hope I got the point across to you. I hope that you find that helpful. I'm going to go ahead and go now. If you like this video, click that like button. Please subscribe. Come back again tomorrow and the next day. I'm doing a video every day till the new year, and I'm going to keep making a ton of videos in the new year. So I look forward to seeing you next time, and have a happy holidays and a happy new year. We'll see you soon. Bye.